folks, I'm Kerry Farr. Welcome to In Your Corner. I can't tell you what a thrill it is for me tonight. Other than my family, these two guys here are the closest guys on earth to me. These two guys and I spent 15 years every day in the boxing gym, and I want to introduce Keith McKnight right here on the end. Keith actually ended up being a tremendous professional boxer. Ended up with a professional career of 44 wins, 4 losses, was the Intercontinental Champion, used to be rated #1 in the WBF. Not only that, you beat the dangerous Phil Jackson, probably your toughest fight, yes, and then you knocked out future Hall of Fame fighter Iran Barkley and former world champion J.B. Williamson. So I want to welcome you, Keith.
Thank you for having me.
And then Timmy Scrap Iron Johnson. We nicknamed this guy Scrap Iron years ago because he was such a scrapper. Timmy, you know, back in those days was the man in our gym. And Timmy became good enough to not only fight for 2 world championships. You fought Randall Yonker for the WBF light heavyweight championship. And then you and I went down to Recife, Brazil about a year later, and you fought Luciano Torres for the super middleweight championship of the world. And then not only that, you fought the great Frank Tate. Yeah, so both of you guys basically started out, you know, and, you know, went somewhere with this thing. Timmy, what do you remember about the good old days when we traveled all over the country and all over the world?
My chin and my nose hurt a lot. Just the camaraderie of the whole game, you know, and just the atmosphere of being there. And since I was a little kid, you know, I had some older brothers that fought and kind of was introduced to it at an early age, years before I met you, and it's kind of was instilled in kind of maybe in my bloodline. But it's like coming up in diapers, sitting ringside. And when I seeked you out after high school and got back into it, it was like home to me, you know. Sitting with my back to these ropes right now, you know, it's just comfortable. It's my office, you know. Whether how far I prospered or how far I didn't go, it's just I always felt comfortable somewhere where I could just be myself inside there, you know.
Step into my office,
yeah,
in the boxing ring. And do you remember, of course, we've got some funny stories and we've got to tell them, and if we have time, I want to go back.
If you let him talk, you'll hear him all.
Oh, we'll hear him all. But I want to go back to the early days, some of the rough things that happened in your life. But do you remember, you know, when Keith came into the gym, you know, he was a kid, you know, he's tall and skinny. Do you remember the early days when he first started?
Definitely. I remember, of course, you see a 6'3" kid, 16, 17 years old, beanpole, but he comes to the gym and you can, a dog sense a dog, you know, and you know he's a fighter off the bat, really, when he comes in. And like I said earlier, there was a time where we questioned him and tried to chin check him a little bit and see, you couldn't make Keith stay home. And Keith, you know, kept coming back, you know, and he's a fighter before he got there. We just put tools with you.
You just taught him how to use those hands.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you know what was so funny, Keith? About the time you started, you know, you were 16 or 17. You were just about as tall as you are now, 165 pounds. And we were in the gym, and we had this little baseball building that you guys remember very well. And there was this wooden floor upstairs, and it wasn't much bigger than what we're sitting at here. And we had part of it roped off. And there was a kid coming to the gym by the name of Lonnie. And, you know, remember, I would start you guys out and I would say, okay, use only a jab. And I'd only let you throw a jab. And so this Lonnie kid was a red-headed kid, and he kept throwing wild right hands. He kept trying to knock everybody out. Right. I said, Lonnie, quit trying to knock everybody out. Just throw a jab. Just throw a jab. The bell would ring, and Lonnie would go out there and try and kill somebody. So I said, wait a minute, Lonnie. I want to put somebody with a little more experience in there with you. Yeah. So I walk over to Timmy. Timmy had been fighting longer than him. I said, Timmy, I want you to go out here and teach this kid a lesson. I gloved him up, and the bell rang, and Lonnie ran across the ring towards you, Timmy, and let out this blood-curdling scream. And honestly, I think it scared you a little bit. You threw a wild overhand right. hit him on the mouth, knocked him colder than a mackerel. He hit the floor. That building shook. I looked at the guy. His mouth was bloody. His tooth went all the way through his mouth, and his eyes rolled back in his head. And I thought, my goodness, he's killed him. And I could, my life flashed before me. And I thought, oh my goodness. And I turned to you. I said, geez, Timmy, I didn't mean for you to kill him. There was another guy in the gym, Keith, you remember. Tell us what he said to you.
Yeah, well, we were all lined up ready to spar, So we're watching sparring. This happens. He turns to me and says, take these gloves off of me. And it was actually Ace Miller, one of the great trainers, Ace Miller, his nephew.
Jimmy Brindley.
Jimmy Brindley. He turns to me, he says, take these gloves off. I said, where you going, man? He said, no, he got hit so hard, I saw the light. This boxing thing ain't for me.
That's the end of my boxing
That was
career.
it. He always messed with the hot rods after that, never did deal with the boxing anymore. But, it takes a different breed to do the boxing.
And, and I must tell folks that Lonnie got up, and we had to send him to the hospital and get a couple stitches, but other than that, it was all right.
Stitches in boxing is like an untied shoe in track. It's going to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Comes with the territory.
Comes with the territory.
Keith, you started out, and you loved the sport. And, you weren't that serious in the early days, but, what happened?
I don't know. I played every sport. And when I found boxing, I really loved it. But, I was young. And I like to have a good time. I like to go out and shoot basketball and have my time. But when you really sat down and told me, look, you need to dedicate yourself and see what you can do with it, it really, it hit me. And when I dedicated myself, I started seeing the wins, and we started, moving up the ladder. And that's when it set that hunger in me, And it's still there. It's still there after all these years. Boxing's one of those things that gets in your blood, Like I always say, if it was a drug, I'd be a junkie.
Yeah,
sure.
and that happens to so many people. They can't give it up. And maybe we'll talk about that in a minute, but I want to explain to folks, if you live in the Nashville, Tennessee area, the best boxing gym in the Nashville, Tennessee area is still called Club Knockout. It's got the original name that we had 20 years ago, but it's no longer coached by me. It's coached by Keith McKnight, and he is an amazing coach and has some amazing talent. I really see, some tremendous things some tremendous talent coming out of your gym.
Well, thank you for those kind words. But yeah, and a lot of it is the stuff that I've learned from you, or I've learned from people that you've introduced me to, through the years. And I always learn from you is to always remember that stuff. I always remember things. It might not be the best trainer in the world, but somebody can teach you something. Everybody has something to offer. And I've taken all of that, and I'm trying to instill that in the kids in the gym today, So.
Well, let's, not only the guys that you beat. I mean, you beat, 2 former world champions, knocked them out.
Right.
But let's go back. Some of the people that influenced you. I mean, Benito Ortiz taught great Puerto Rican trainer, great featherweight fighter from the 1960s and 70s, taught you how to move.
He was the, I would say, the one that really showed me the most about the movement. His exact words were, "You're a heavyweight that's going to move like a welterweight."
And you did.
And I did because of him, because of repetition, lots of hours in the gym, and I listened,
But not only him, you were in Kronk Gym under the watchful eye of Emmanuel Stewart, although he didn't train you.
Right.
One of the best trainers in the world in those days, who wasn't known that well, but Eddie Futch's first professional fighter, the great Luther Burgess, trained you for a while and actually, he was really helping develop you, and he unfortunately passed away, but Luther was a great man.
He was a great man, great trainer, great man first.
Yeah.
Definitely a great trainer, and learned a lot from him. The one thing, like I've told you before, that he instilled in me more than anything was confidence. Believing in your training. That was one thing that he really pushed. If you did everything in the gym that you needed to do, when you can go into the ring with a clear conscience knowing that you left nothing behind, you left everything in the gym, then the fights will be easy. And that's the biggest thing I learned from him.
But, you were also in the gym, with Buster Mathis Jr. You and him were good friends.
Right. Actually, his father was there, too.
Buster Sr., so you benefited from his knowledge.
Absolutely.
Buster Mathis Sr., You were in the gym with Kevin Rooney, Mike Tyson's
Absolutely.
trainer.
Yes.
And then the great Curtis Coates, the Hall of Fame fighter,
Right.
trained you. So you had a lot of people that instilled a lot of stuff in you.
I did. I was lucky, you know, but a lot of it was because you believed in me and the hard work that we put in as a team, you know, because, you know, a lot of fighters, they want to say it's just them, but it's not them. It's a team effort, you know. You don't get yourself there. It's a team thing, but you're the one that's paying the price in the gym. But, you know, you put me in front of a lot of good people, and I believe it worked out for me.
It worked out. Now, folks, you've just heard Keith McKnight has been around 4 or 5 or 6 of the great boxers and trainers in the world, spent time with them. If you want a coach that can get you to the top and you want to come to the Nashville, Tennessee area, I would recommend Keith McKnight because of what he's learned from these boxers. Now, Timmy, let's go back to you. Let's you and me go back, I don't know how many years, but you and I got on a plane, and you know, let's talk about the time that we flew down to Recife, Brazil, and you fought Luciano Torres for the super middleweight championship of the world. Take us back and tell us a little bit about, you know, that time in your life.
Well, at that time in my life,
And before we go forward, folks, I've got to tell you, I always had to watch him because he was always sneaking off with the ladies. I'm only saying because it's the truth. I always had to watch him sleep in the same room with him. Timmy, now pick
Not
up.
me.
You made him earn his money. You made him earn his money.
It's the fight game. Well,
He's a lover and a fighter.
yeah. I just, at that point in my life, you know, basically still doing a lot of soul searching for my own self and my own well-being. Still find my place, you know. And at that time, I was still dealing with a lot of rage on the outside, stuff that I never realized. That just like clocking in and going to work, you take your personal life with you. You know?
Yeah.
The things you do that you don't, the things that you're doing. Not that it's all bad, and not that it's not all perfect either, but things that you do go to your job with you.
Yeah, well,
You know, and
we're
I'm
going to
so
go
up-
to the Luciano Torres, but now that you've mentioned that, take us back and tell us why you had this boiling rage inside of you. Well,
As a kid,
yeah.
you know, I was left as a kid, and
Your parents left you.
pretty much abandoned me, and I was, by the grace of God, you know, the Johnsons came along, and I was adopted at an early age. So I spent the next 10 years trying to understand the concept of letting go and letting him and just letting it go and go on. That, you know what, people make mistakes in this world and make bad choices. Sometimes it's your own mother and father.
Yeah.
You know, but I dealt with a lot of that, you know, and so going in, I remember going in, we had to shake some weight for that fight here real quick. So I remember going into that fight, dealing with I had already learned to just basically the mental part, the mental and emotional part, to kind of put it on the back burner. So that's where I was lacking a lot, really. You know, physically, I think we'd get in pretty good shape, and I just remember it being so hot and getting there, and as far as it got to the point where I was just depending more on my physical being, you know, whereas to when you go in the ring, and if you want to be a champion, then you have to choose to be a man of integrity outside that ring.
Yeah.
You know, so my choices, you know, they come back and got me. You know, so, you know, it's drinking a little beer, smoking a little marijuana here, and thinking I could get by with it. You know, and thinking I could cut corners. You know, not as far as the physical part. Training, I'd get in world-class shape, man, because I had natural skills. And that little lie in my mind would say, man, you ain't got to train. Sometimes you ain't got to do this. You ain't got to do quite what everybody else does because you're more gifted than the next man.
Yeah.
You know, that would have been all the more reason to work harder. So I dealt with a lot of demons.
Yeah.
And you know, we all deal with them daily. But the best thing I can say about that whole fight is getting knocked down. Is I was always, by the grace of God, I was always there. I was always able to get back up. You know, I never quit.
There you go.
And
Yeah.
even at 44, in my mind, you could tell me that I can't fight today, and I'd probably go out there and start running
No,
and training
I
and
know.
prove
You
you around.
still
Prove
fight.
you around.
Yeah.
But I just never gave up, you know.
Yeah.
And so I keep trying and keep trying, and it's, you know, we fell short. I used to tell some people, I'd be honest about it, and it'd be like, who's your toughest opponent? We had 20 or 25 fights already, Kerry, and you know, people would ask me, who's your toughest opponent? You're looking at him.
There you go.
You know,
Yeah, you.
I was my toughest opponent. You know,
And
even Frank Tate couldn't have touched me with you know. But
yeah, it's
but
amazing.
I'm thankful for all that because like I'm able to pass it on. You know, I got some people I'm kind of training with today, and maybe you know, if it's possible, I can get with Keith some, and maybe hopefully in the future I have to be willing to work with those kids and pass them that on because. But everything that I've learned in the boxing and everything that seems like was negative, it's all used to the good today because I can go to the gym and work when I work with somebody on pads today. I know how to train them and know how. But to go back to your initial question, what I was going through in that fight is, I mean, it was the best time of my life. Don't get me wrong. We're fixing to fight for the super middleweight championship of the world, you know. And I just remember it being so hot, and it was a happy time of my life, and I wouldn't change anything because I learned a lot in that fight, and I learned a lot about. I'm still, you know, maybe I wasn't dominating the fight, but I believe I learned about politics in that fight, you know.
Yeah.
And we learned a little about the promotional guys. I think we almost got trapped there, Kerry, you know.
Well, we felt like they were mobsters. He was from Argentina.
Yeah.
And folks, I want to go back and talk a little bit about this because Timmy's not telling as much, but Timmy back in those days was kind of like Muhammad Ali. He would get out there, you know, and he would do a little trash talking. And so the promoter was taking us around. We were going for television interviews and radio and television interviews. And we get to this open air market. And Timmy starts telling these people in Brazil what he's going to do to Luciano Torres. They called him Todo Duro, which I think meant hard as steel, I've been told. And so this butcher gets upset and comes out, and I can't remember if he had a machete.
I think it was a meat hatchet.
Meat hatchet. But so anyway, Timmy wisely, you know, quits talking, and we escape with our lives. But you didn't learn a lesson. The next night in the fight, we get to the fight, and we're now. It's in America, it's Thanksgiving, but we're in South America, so it's hot as blazes, and we're in this bullfighting arena. You know, had sand on the floor, and literally 5,000 people with no heat or air. It's an outside auditorium with a roof over the top of it. And you're boxing for the super middleweight championship of the world, and you're boxing this guy's ears off, and you start sticking your chin out and then fighting him to hit it, and then you start sticking your tongue out, and all of a sudden all of these crazy Brazilians start throwing oranges and apples and ice into the ring, and I'm thinking, geez, we're going to get killed.
Yeah. I think they just thought I was hungry, you know. So. But no, I didn't want to leave the ring that night. I did not want to leave the ring that night because I felt like I was cheated, and I wanted to be moved out of there that night, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I honestly think you were winning the fight. I don't think if the fight had gone a distance, we would have gotten the decision because we were in South America.
Yep.
But I think you were beating the guy, and then you got cut, and they stopped the fight. And immediately after they stopped the fight, it was unbelievable, Timmy. I mean, all of those people that were throwing stuff at you mobbed you. I mean, they came after you like you were a rock star. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah. They didn't give me no money, though. But yeah, that was awesome. Like I said, I didn't want to leave the arena that night. I just remember at that point, I knew what was going on, and I felt like I said, I wasn't dominating the fight, but I got cut early, like in the second round, and I think they tried to stop it in the 8th.
Yeah.
And like 6 rounds later, and I'm fighting a world championship fight with my eye laid open, and now you're going to stop the fight. It's like, man, you're going to have to move me out here tonight, but as soon as Kerry said, somebody might pull out a blade or something, we better get out of here. But,
I was scared. I mean,
imagine.
Yeah, Timmy's soaking it in though, because the people were mobbed. I mean, but I was scared to death.
Yeah, the people were awesome. The same ones that were, like I said, throwing things at me and you know, going against my tactics in the ring. You know, trying to keep a man off balance in his own mind. If I keep him thinking, then I'm controlling the fight. You know, so they're trying. Those the same ones kind of against me. They were waiting out. If you remember, after I got stitched up, waiting outside the locker room also.
Yeah.
And it's like, let me know that you're the champion, man. So even the remember the big monster bodyguard we had?
Yeah.
It was like made Keith look small, and he was like, man, I got you extra money to whip this guy. But
they loved
the
you,
people were great.
Everybody
It was
Yeah.
an awesome time. I wouldn't change it. But
Well, Keith, let's go back to a couple highlights in your career. You know, for a while there, you know, we hooked up with Cedric Kushner, who was one of the top promoters in the world at the time.
Right.
And, you know, maybe the biggest mistake I ever made as a manager was Butch Lewis, who had handled Michael Spinks, wanted to handle you, and I wouldn't go talk to him, and maybe we should have. But, you know, you were fighting for Kushner.
Right.
And, you know, and you peeled off 4 or 5 wins on television, and then you face this incredible guy, Phil Jackson, who could hit like Mike Tyson, had already fought Lennox Lewis for the heavyweight championship of the world, and had hurt Lewis in the fight.
Right.
What was that experience like? Because that was a rough fight.
It was a rough fight, but you know we were ready for it because we had a good camp, and plus, like you said, we had some good fights leading up to it, testing me, getting me ready for that fight. And but that was the one. You know, we always had to. Every fighter has to have that fight that puts you over the top. You know, with you got to take a chance, and that was our chance. He was 38-5 with 36 knockouts, so it was a risk.
Good punch.
But you know, we had good sparring, we had a good camp, and we had a good team. And we went in, and I was nervous, but I wasn't getting beat that night. You know, at home with all of family, friends, the TV was there. You know, when you're fighting at home, you got to dig in, and that's what I did.
Yeah, it was on international television, and I mean, the first round was kind of a feeling out round. The second round, he came out and caught you cold and knocked you down not once but twice in the second round.
With the same shot.
Yeah.
And you know, he was a hooker. He was a left hooker, so we worked a lot of camp of keeping the right hand up, you know, and moving away from the hook. So we're moving to the left. So of course he comes out and he hits me with the right hand, boom, right on the chin. You know, not real hurt, but he took my legs. So I'm thinking, okay, don't get hit. He's going to come with the hook. He hits you with the right hand, he's coming with the hook. Gets up, boom, same shot again. And everybody always asks, man, what were you thinking? And you know, the whole time I was on one knee, I was thinking, man, this dude's trying to knock me out at home.
Time to fight.
You know, I'm fixing to grab him like I love him.
Yeah.
And he came
now,
at me.
it's a smart fighter that holds until he clears his head, right?
Exactly. You know, I never want to be known as the guy that was tough. Tough guys are ugly.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
you know
right.
what
They
I mean?
get beat up, right?
I don't, you know, I don't want to get sorry. But I, you know, I never want to be tough. I want to be slick. I want to be the guy hitting and not getting hit. And I knew that physically he was stronger than me. You know, I'm a realist.
Yeah.
But when he came at me, I knew that I was strong enough where I could hold him to get my head. And once I got my head right and I could get my feet and my hands working together, then I could get something going.
Well, how does a guy that's been knocked down twice in the second round get up and win the next 8 rounds? How does that happen?
You do it by doing it in the gym. I won that fight in the gym. You know, that fight was won weeks before.
Yeah.
And because my endurance and the physical level I was at that night allowed me to get up.
I also believe it finds out if there's a true champion in there, and there is.
His heart,
so
yeah,
it
took a tremendous amount of heart. But I'll tell you the other thing, too. Folks, what happened was during the fight, Keith was facing this tremendous puncher, Phil Jackson. I'm telling you, could punch as hard as Mike Tyson. He catches Keith clean, dead on the chin twice with right hands. After those 2 knockdowns, Keith, I remember you started rolling that shoulder, and every time he would throw that right hand, you would roll that shoulder, make him miss, and come back with your right hand, and for the next 8 rounds, you boxed his ears off.
Right, and it worked good, you know, which like our friend Jonathan was talking about, or I mean, I'm sorry, Buddy was talking about, you have to be versatile. You can't just have plan A, you know, you have to have a plan B and a plan C. And we saw the right hand coming, we started rocking and bringing ours, basically bullying the bully, you know.
Yeah.
He's going to hit you with the right hand, you bring your right hand back, and it started working. And the movement and the jab, you know, the left hand that Luther Burgess just preached and preached and preached about.
Touch him, touch him, touch him.
It paid off. It paid off. The 12 rounds on the bag at Ed Jones's camp, you know, the 12 rounds on the bag with just the left hand at our place, it paid off. He knew what we needed to do to win that fight.
Yeah. But Luther had already had the stroke. Luther wasn't with us for that fight, but his imprint was still there with you.
Luther was with us. He's still with me, you know.
Amen,
I remember a lot of stuff that he tells me. You know, like sometimes my kids will say, you know, oh, wow, Dad, look at that junky car. And I always remember in Detroit, Luther, I said the same thing. I said, wow, that guy's driving that old junky car. Luther said, I tell you something, rubber wheels is better than rubber heels any
That's
day.
right. That's
you know?
right.
Little things like that that you think's funny, but it sticks with you. You
Yeah,
know?
he could just say things like that. And
Right. It was just knowledge. It might come out funny, it might come out serious, but it's knowledge and the stuff you need to remember, you know.
You know, guys, we've just got really 2 or 3 minutes left. Tell us something, you know, one of your greatest memories. It could be about each other, it could be about somebody else. Tell me, what's something funny or something really memorable from your boxing career?
How about the night when we went to Carrie's house, Mom's house,
don't
she
do
gave us
that.
the apple fritter?
Don't do that, man. We're not going to do that.
How about the apple fritter?
That was
Your
not-
mom gave us an apple fritter. It was freezer burnt.
That was not his mama's fault. It was freezer burnt. Me and Carrie, we have
Was
talked
my
about
mother
this.
there or something?
She made us a plate. We were at the Spirit of America tournament. She made us some dinner. She had the apple fritter. She handed it to us. I took a bite of it. And
It was freezer burnt, but your mama didn't know it. That she had
I
cooked
slid it onto Timmy's plate.
them both on
and
my
she made him eat it. How do you like it?
You had to. That's Carrie's mom. One of my most memorable things. It's crazy. It sounds crazy. Just the first thing popped in my mind was Keith. We was at we advanced to the Southern in Knoxville, and he's like, it was always me that's getting. I was always the one going to the principal's office or yada yada. But Keith is like, don't go sit on that table, man. Don't sit on that table.
I told
And I
you
went over
3
and
times.
sat at a table, and it's like gobs of people from different clubs everywhere, and that table collapsed, man.
He was always the older one, but I'm the one who had to
He'd
be
tell
the
me,
big
Timmy,
brother.
don't sit on the table.
Don't sit on the
man."
table.
I was like,
Well, I remember being at the Southern Golden Gloves with you, Timmy, and it was just you and I one night. We were eating at a restaurant, and this waitress came over, very attractive young lady. Back in the day when, you know, the girls used to come up and say, she said, you got a girlfriend? And before he could answer, she said, you want one?
I still got her number.
He said,
We stay in touch.
well,
No, it's been a long journey for me, and I've loved it.
Yeah, well, you don't have enough time for us to sit here and tell the stories that we have. You
oh,
know.
I know you guys had so
I appreciate
many.
everything you've done, Carrie. And
Yeah.
you know what? You not only dealt with boxing, you dealt with all of our baggage as well as gobs and more fighters. So that takes a special person, you know. So there's always 2 sides of the fence, you know. So.
But we could sit here and say we are family.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
No doubt about it.
Absolutely.
Guys, I really appreciate you being on In Your Corner. Folks, I want to tell you, these 2 guys right here are like, you know, I had a daughter. I love her dearly. These are the 2 sons that I never had. These guys, I love them. And, you know, I'm glad you got to see my guys on In Your Corner. Tune in, same time, same station next week for another exciting edition of In Your Corner.